Most people have never heard the name Salvador Alvarenga. That is about to change. Imagine you are floating, not peacefully, violently. The ocean beneath you is not water anymore. It is a living thing trying to kill you. Your boat is gone. Your engine is gone. Your partner has stopped moving. You cannot see land. You have not seen land in 4 days. You are drinking your own urine to stay alive. And you are beginning to wonder if you ever existed at all, or if the sea simply invented you. And now it is taking you back. Salvador Alvarenga was a professional fisherman. He had spent 15 years on the water. He was not afraid of the ocean. The ocean did not care. On November 17th, 2012, he left the coast of Mexico on a routine 30-hour fishing trip. He never came back, not for 438 days. But this is not that story. This is the story of the 9 days before anyone knew he was missing. 9 days that most accounts of his survival skip entirely. 9 days that contain the most brutal, the most desperate, and the most extraordinary decisions of his entire ordeal. What he did on day 3 will make you question everything you think you know about human survival. Salvador Alvarenga was 36 years old and built like a man who had never once lived indoors. Wide shoulders, calloused hands, a laugh that people across a dock could hear clearly. He had grown up in El Salvador, drifted into Mexico, and found the ocean the way some people find religion. Not by looking for it, but by realizing they were already in it. He was not a cautious man. He was not reckless either. He was experienced. There is a difference. His crew that morning was a teenager named Ezequiel Cordoba, 17 years old, his first deep water trip. He had talked his way onto the boat because he needed the money and because Salvador had a reputation, the best fisherman on that stretch of coast. If you were going to go out, you went out with Salvador. They left before dawn on November 17th. The air smelled like salt and diesel. The Pacific was flat. Ezequiel was nervous. Salvador handed him coffee in a dented tin cup and told him the sea was in a good mood. That was the last thing either of them said. That felt entirely true. Here is the detail that matters. The one detail that comes back later, when everything else has been stripped away. Salvador carried no photographs on the boat, no wallet, no personal items. Fishermen don't. Water destroys everything. But before he left, every single trip without exception, he pressed his hand flat against the wooden post at the entrance of his one-room home in Paradon. Just his palm, against the wood. He never explained it to anyone. When asked, he shrugged and said it was nothing, but he did it every time. The wood had a dark stain from years of his handprints layered over each other. He pressed it again that morning, in the dark, before anyone was awake to see him. By 11 a.m., they had a boat full of fish. By noon, the sky had changed color. Not dramatically, not the way storms look in movies. It shifted from pale blue to the color of old pewter in the time it took Salvador to light a cigarette. The wind picked up from the southwest. The swells changed direction. Salvador looked at Ezequiel. Ezequiel looked at the sky. We go back, Salvador said. He pulled the engine cord. It did not start. The engine is flooded. Salvador works it for 20 minutes. His hands know this engine the way a pianist knows keys. He pumps the fuel line, clears the filter, tries again. Nothing. The swells are now 2 meters, 3. The boat is climbing waves and dropping into trenches that shouldn't exist this close to shore. Ezequiel is on the radio. He gets through. He tells the coast, the boat name, their position, roughly 30 miles offshore. The response is broken. Static. A voice saying something Then nothing. The storm arrives at 2:14 p.m. This is not a metaphor. This is not a gradual thing. A wall of rain hits them like concrete. The temperature drops 8 degrees in minutes. The visibility collapses to zero. Salvador cannot see the bow of his own boat. The ice chest breaks loose and goes over the side. 200 kilograms of fish, the entire day's catch, their entire reason for being here, gone in 4 seconds. Then the wave hits. Not a swell, a wave. A vertical wall of black water, 8 meters high, that appears from nowhere in the whiteout. Salvador sees it for exactly 1 second before it breaks over the boat. He grabs the side rail with both hands. He locks his fingers around the metal and does not let go. Ezekiel goes down. He does not go overboard. He is slammed to the deck floor, a gash opened across his forehead, blood mixing immediately with the water sloshing across the boat. He is conscious. Barely. Salvador hauls him upright with one arm. The engine is gone. Not stopped. Gone. The mount sheared from the transom in the wave. The radio is dead. The GPS is dead. Everything electrical is dead. They are adrift. The storm pushes them. North, then west. Away from the coast, away from the shipping lanes, away from everything. Survival truth. Every professional mariner and Coast Guard rescue authority recommends a minimum of 3 redundant communication devices on any offshore trip beyond 10 miles. An EPIRB emergency beacon, $200 to $400. A handheld VHF radio, $80. And a satellite messenger, $150 with subscription. Combined cost, under $650. Any one of these 3 devices would have ended this story before nightfall on day 1. By sunset, land was no longer visible, in any direction at all. Day 1. The storm runs through the night. Salvador ties Ezekiel to the side railing with a rope from the equipment locker. If a wave hits while the boy is unconscious, he stays on the boat. And it is a brutal solution. It is the right one. He inventories what they have. He does this methodically, the way experienced men do when panic would be easier. The instinct to panic is real. He sets it aside. They have a small cooler with a partial bag of tortillas, approximately 2 liters of drinking water in a sealed bottle, 2 cans of sardines, a fillet knife, several lengths of rope, a half roll of electrical tape, 2 life vests, a bucket, and the boat itself. The panga, the fiberglass hull, is intact. It is their platform, their island. Day 2. The storm clears. The sun returns like an insult. Salvador rigs a canopy from one of the life vests and a length of rope strung between the bow rail and the motor mount. It blocks perhaps a third of the direct sun. In the Pacific, a direct equatorial sun raises surface temperature above 45 degrees Celsius. Without shade, dehydration becomes critical in 6 hours. He stretches the water, 1 small cup each, morning and evening. No more. He catches rain. The second day brings brief squalls. He uses the bucket and the tarp of the life vest to collect every drop. 17 hours of effort yields less than a liter. He does not tell Ezekiel how little it is. Day 3. Ezekiel is deteriorating. His head wound is infected. His lips are cracked. He cannot keep food down. He has stopped being able to sit upright without help. And then, on the afternoon of day 3, something appears on the horizon. A ship. A large cargo vessel, maybe 6 kilometers north, moving east, moving toward the coast, toward people, toward everything. Salvador stands on the bow of the drifting panga and screams. He waves the life vest. He uses the fillet knife to reflect sunlight, a mirror signal angled directly toward the bridge of the ship. The ship does not alter course. It continues east. It passes. It disappears. The ocean after that is the loudest silence Salvador has ever experienced. Stop, right here. They had three choices. Option A: continue drifting and conserving energy. Stay low, reduce caloric burn, wait for another ship or for the current to push them toward land or a shipping lane. Lowest energy cost, highest uncertainty. The current was pushing them west, deeper into open Pacific. Waiting was slow death. Option B: attempt to construct a paddle or sail from available materials and actively steer toward the coast, east-southeast, back toward Mexico. Exhausting, like the distance was already over 100 kilometers. Without knowing their exact position, they could paddle in entirely the wrong direction and burn their last reserves. Option C: stop trying to be rescued and start building a sustainable survival system. Active fishing, full rainwater harvesting, using the boat as a permanent shelter. Accept the long game. Stop counting days. Start counting resources. What would you have done? Take a second. You are dehydrated. Your partner is sick. The last ship just vanished. Because what Salvador chose next changed everything. He chose option C. He stopped looking at the horizon for rescue. He looked down into the water and started solving the next 24 hours instead of the next rescue window. He took the electrical tape and the rope and fashioned a fishing line from the frayed edge of the rope's inner cord. He used a bent piece of metal from the motor mount as a hook. He used a piece of sardine as bait. He caught a mahi-mahi within the first hour. He ate the eyes first. He knew from experience that fish eyes contain fresh water. Small amounts, but water. He squeezed them like capsules directly into Ezekiel's mouth. Survival truth. Raw fish eyes and fluid from fish spinal tissue contain small but meaningful amounts of fresh water. A technique documented by both survival instructors and real open ocean survivors. Most untrained people instinctively refuse raw fish entirely, losing a critical fluid source when it matters most. Day 5. Day 6. The food held. The rain came twice more. The water held. But Ezekiel was not getting better. He was getting worse. Day 7. Ezekiel stops eating, not refuses. Stops. He cannot swallow. His throat is swollen with infection and dehydration. He lies on the floor of the boat and breathes in small, uneven intervals. Salvador forces water through his lips with cupped hands. Night of day 7. The temperature drops to 18 degrees Celsius. Sounds cold? On open ocean, exposed, wet, after 7 days without real sleep. 18 degrees is hypothermia territory. The body stops generating heat efficiently when it has no calories left to burn. Salvador wraps them both in the life vests. He holds Ezekiel against his own body for heat. He stays awake. He stays awake all night because he knows if he sleeps, he may not wake Ezekiel. Day 8. The boy stops responding. He is breathing, his eyes open. But when Salvador speaks to him, there is nothing behind them. No recognition, no response, just breath. Salvador is alone now in every way that matters. This is when a man either ends or begins. And this is the moment Salvador Alvarenga thought about his hand. The handprint on the wooden post, the one he pressed every morning before a trip. He thought of the wood, dark with years of his palm, and understood something he had never put into words before. He pressed his hand there because it was a promise. Every time he came home, the handprint was proof. Proof he had been somewhere real and come back. Proof that he existed. Proof that the sea had not yet taken him. If he stopped, if he let go, there would be no new handprint. His hand had survived everything the ocean had thrown at him for 15 years. His hands were still here, but they were still working. They were still catching fish and collecting rain and holding this boy against the cold. His hands were still here. He pressed his palm flat against the warm fiberglass hull of the panga. Right there. In the middle of the Pacific Ocean, no land in any direction, on day 8 of 9. Then he stood up. Day 8 brought a second catastrophe. A squall, sudden, vicious, hit the boat and nearly capsized it. The bucket went over. One of the water reserves, half a liter stored carefully in a sealed sardine tin, went with it. Gone. In 12 seconds. Everything they had rationed over 3 days of careful collection. The water was gone. Salvador did not sit down. He re-rigged the life vest canopy. He tied everything remaining to the central rope. He fished for 4 straight hours and caught 2 triggerfish. And he extracted every drop of fluid from them with his hands and his mouth. He did not stop, not once, not for a single hour. Day 9, morning. The current had been shifting for 2 days, and Salvador, who had spent 15 years reading water, felt it before he saw it. The color changed, marginally. The deep blue of open Pacific lightning, not to green, not yet. But losing that absolute blackness that means depth. Depth meant distance from land. This was different. He smelled something different too. Something organic, vegetation. The faint rot sweetness of a river delta mixing with salt water. He began paddling with his hands off the starboard side. For 2 hours, both hands alternating in the water, steering the drifting hull by body weight and palm pressure alone. No oar, no paddle, just his hands. At 9:40 a.m., on day 9, another fishing boat appeared. Not a cargo vessel, a panga, identical to his own. 3 men aboard, 100 meters away. Salvador stood. He could barely stand. His legs had not supported his full weight in 4 days. He waved. They saw him. What happened next is the part nobody expects. The fishermen nearly did not stop. They thought the drifting boat was abandoned. In those waters, abandoned boats mean one of 2 things: smuggler's decoy or a debris hazard. Both mean stay clear. They were already altering course away when one of the men on their boat saw Salvador's arm moving. Not waving, not signaling. Pressing his palm flat against the air, toward them. Open hand, fingers spread. The same gesture he had made against wood for 15 years. They stopped. They pulled alongside. The Ezequiel Cordoba was airlifted from the rescue boat to a hospital in Pijijiapan. He survived. Barely. His recovery took 3 months. Salvador Alvarenga walked unsteadily, but on his own, off the rescue boat and onto the dock. He had lost 14 kilograms. He had saltwater sores across both forearms. He had not slept more than 2 consecutive hours in 9 days. The first thing he did on shore was press his hand against the dock post. Survival truth. A personal EPIRB beacon, an emergency position. Indicating radio beacon. Weighs 300 grams and costs under $300. When activated, it sends a distress signal to satellites that alerts Coast Guard services within 90 minutes, with GPS accuracy to within 100 meters. Had Salvador carried one, the Coast Guard would have reached him within hours of the storm on day 1. 9 days becomes 9 hours, and that is the entire story, compressed into one $300 decision made before leaving the dock. 9 days, roughly 400 kilometers of open Pacific drift. Temperatures ranging from 18 to 44 degrees Celsius. 2 men, 1 boat, no engine, no communication, no navigation. 1 survived with moderate injuries. 1 survived with severe ones. Later, When journalists asked Salvador what he thought about during those 9 days, he paused for a long time before answering. He said, "I thought about how much work there was to do next. Not rescue, not death, not his family. Work." He meant it practically. The next fish, the next rain, the next hour. He had turned survival into labor, into a series of problems that had solutions if you were still alive to solve them. He had refused, on a fundamental level, to let the ocean become larger than the next task in front of him. That is not a personality trait. That is a decision. And it is one every single person watching this video is capable of making. 3 decisions changed everything in this story. Decision 1. No emergency beacon. Salvador left port without an EPIRB or satellite communicator because he had made this trip dozens of times and never needed one. What he should have done: treated every offshore trip as if it were the one that could go wrong, because eventually, statistically, one of them is. Fishermen and mariners who carry EPIRB devices are rescued an average of 8 times faster than those relying solely on radio communication. Decision 2. Flagging down the cargo ship with reflected light alone. On day 3, Salvador used a knife blade to signal the passing ship, and what he should have done: constructed a smoke signal using the life vest foam, which is petroleum-based and burns with heavy black smoke visible for kilometers in daylight. He had a lighter. He had foam. The components were there. Most untrained survivors under stress default to what feels intuitive, waving and shouting, rather than what is actually visible at distance. Decision 3. Continuing to hope for fast rescue instead of immediately committing to long-term survival. Days 1 through 3 were partially lost to watching the horizon. What he should have done, and what ultimately saved him, was commit to option C immediately. Fish, harvest water, reduce energy expenditure. Every hour spent searching for rescue instead of building sustainability cost them water, calories, and Ezekiel's window of recovery. Any one of these I made differently, and this story ends another way. That is the terrifying truth about survival. It is almost never one catastrophic failure. It is 3 small ones in a row. When the Coast Guard later examined the panga, they found a series of small marks scratched into the fiberglass floor of the hull. 9 of them, evenly spaced, near where Salvador had slept. 1 for each day. The 9th one had been scratched on the morning of day 9, before rescue, before the current shifted, before any sign of land. He had already counted it. He had already decided it was going to be a day he survived. He was right. Next video. A family of 4 set out for a 3-day backcountry camping trip. A wildfire cut off every exit route simultaneously. They had 1 water bottle, 1 folding knife, and a 7-year-old who couldn't walk. And what the father did on night 2 is something no survival manual has ever recommended. And it worked. If stories like this remind you that humans are built to survive anything, you already belong on this channel.